Hello and welcome to my video lecture on catching the PDO exception. So far what we've done is we've created our database PHP file, which is what we're going to use to set up our data pipe to get back to our database. In this case, it's a MySQL database. The host is the local host on my local computer, and the database name is my first. And I can always go back and double check that. Alright, so here's my database is called my first, my table is user info, but I'll get to that in a second. And 127.0.0.1 is my local computer. Here is my data entry page. Right. So here we're connecting as username root. I don't have a password for username root, or else I would have a password parameter argument to pass in there. Now, here's the problem. What could happen is that I could spell root wrong. I could put in the wrong password. A whole host of bad things can happen when you're trying to set up your PHP data object connection. So what we're going to do is we're going to surround this in a try-catch block. And when I try to put this into a try-catch block, I've got my try section, right? So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to make this connection in the database. And that's going to be close. And then if it doesn't, if that doesn't work, I have to try to catch. And in this case, what I'm going to try to catch, I can catch any kind of exception here. But here I am specifically interested in catching the PDO exception. And here we are, gives us a nice description, represents an error raised by a PDO. You should not throw a PDO exception from your own code. See exceptions for more information about exceptions in PHP. So you can check out that information. In this case, we're going to take whatever gets returned by the PDO exception, and we're going to throw it into a local variable E. Then if we do catch it, we're going to have to do something with it. So we're going to set up another local variable that's going to take on the error message that gets returned. And the way we do that is we're going to set that equal to our $E local variable, and we're going to call that, and you can see very nicely in the IDE, we're going to grab its get message function, and the get message function is going to run. It's going to grab the message thrown by this exception, put it into this error message, and then we would want to exit out of this form so that nothing else would run, and that would pretty much be it. We could use exit or die. Both of them are going to do the same thing, but we really want to display this somewhere. So what we're going to probably want to do is create or call using the include a file to display that. And in this case, what is commonly called the database error file .php, right? Semicolon. So here I'm trying to set up my DSN variable, string variable, that's going to have my information that I want to use to connect to my MySQL host. The username, the password would be here normally, and maybe some options. In this case, I don't have that. And then I'm going to set up a try block. The try is going to try to set up the connection. If the connection happens, DB is going to be a reference to the database that I'm going to use. And then if it doesn't, I have a catch, which is going to try to catch the PDO exception, take the error message from that exception, put it into a local variable, and then I'm going to include this database error.php file, which I have right here. I didn't want to show you the code because it's mostly actually that's not my file. This my database error file for this project. It's really simply a mostly HTML file. an HTML5 file. It's got a header section for my first. We've got a style sheet. We've got a body section. Again, a header that says my first. Another header that says database error. And then it just gives the user a more friendly error message than they would get from the system throwing a PDO exception error. So there was an error connected to the database. The database must be installed as described in the appendix. And in that case, I'm referencing the author's book that I'm using, which is Murex PHP MySQL, which is an excellent book. This is where most of this code comes from. And it says MySQL must be running as described in Chapter 1, and that means we have to have XAMPP open and MySQL running, which we are. And then it's going to show whatever the error message was that was sent by the PDO exception in our in our database PHP file. So, and then it's going to exit, and this is what's going to be displayed. So here's our database PHP. Here's our database error page. And now what we need to do is somewhere along the line, we need to call this database PHP to set up this connection. And the way we do that, we'll do that in the next video. This video's gone on long enough. So that's how you would set up your database PHP file to try to catch a PDO exception. And this would be an example of a database error PHP file that you would use to display the error to your user. And now that you know how to do that, you can use that in your coding.